The Lotus in the Mud. Once, in a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and lush green fields, there lived a young man named Aaron. Though the village was beautiful, Aaron's life was anything but. His days were filled with hardship, and he often found himself consumed by frustration and despair. He was a farmer, toiling from dawn to dusk in rocky soil that yielded little. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Aaron sat by the riverbank, his heart heavy with hopelessness. The vibrant colors of the setting sun reflected in the water, but he barely noticed. Instead, he clenched a handful of dirt from the river's edge and muttered, "Why is life so cruel? No matter how hard I work, I am stuck in this mud." Nearby, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Do you see that lotus flower?" Startled, Aaron turned to see a serene figure standing nearby. It was the Buddha, his gentle gaze resting on the blooming lotus in the water. Aaron nodded, puzzled. The lotus was beautiful, its delicate pink petals unfolding in perfect harmony. It floated gracefully above the murky water, untouched by the mud below. The Buddha sat beside Aaron and continued, "The lotus grows in mud, yet it rises above it, untouched and pure. Its beauty comes not despite the mud, but because of it. The mud nourishes the lotus, giving it strength to bloom. In the same way, Aaron, our struggles are not meant to trap us. They are the very foundation for our growth." Arun looked at the Buddha, his brow furrowed. "But how can pain and hardship help us grow? All I feel is anger and helplessness." The Buddha smiled. "Imagine a farmer who refuses to plant seeds because the soil is too hard. Would he ever see a harvest? Hard soil, like hardship, may seem like a barrier, but it is the farmer's patience and effort that transform it into fertile ground. Similarly, your challenges can lead to wisdom and strength if you embrace them with patience and determination." The Buddha picked up a handful of mud and let it drip through his fingers. "This mud is not your enemy, Aaron. It is your teacher. Let it remind you that beauty can arise even from the darkest places." Aaron stared at the lotus, his mind racing. He began to see his struggles in a new light, not as punishment, but as opportunities for growth. The rocky soil on his farm could teach him resilience. His failures could teach him humility and persistence. Over the coming days, Arun changed the way he approached his life. Instead of cursing the rocky soil, he studied it, learning how to cultivate crops that could thrive in such conditions. Instead of comparing himself to others, he focused on his own progress. Slowly but surely, his farm began to flourish. The once barren fields bloomed with vibrant crops, much like the lotus that had inspired him. Years later, Arun became known throughout the village not just for his abundant harvests, but for his wisdom and kindness. People came to him for advice, and he always shared the lesson of the lotus. The mud of life is inevitable, but it does not define us. What defines us is how we rise above it. Moral of the story. The story of the lotus in the mud teaches us that adversity and challenges are not meant to break us, but to shape us. Like the lotus, we can rise above difficulties and bloom with grace and strength. By embracing struggles as opportunities for growth, we can transform even the darkest moments into sources of beauty and wisdom.